I'm Arthur Bovino, the executive editor for the Daily Meal, here today in our kitchen with Chef Ed McFarland from Ed's Lobster Bar and your stall on Gansevoort Market in New York City.
Correct.
Ed, welcome. Thanks so much for being here.
It's good to see you.
So Ed, I worked with Ed at his restaurant for about 6 months, and I was on the line. Today we're going to be talking about oysters because we did some fair amount of shucking of oysters too.
Absolutely.
So let's just start the basics of oysters. You know, how do you pick an oyster? Where do you get them from? You know, I mean, let's start there.
Okay, well, first of all, obviously you want to go and deal with somebody reputable, especially when you're going to eat raw shellfish. And you want to know what type of oysters you like, whether you like briny oysters, sweet oysters, creamy, metallic-y oysters. So you have an idea of what you want to buy. So do a little homework on the internet about oysters. It'll help you out, and we're going to help you out as well.
One of the first times that we worked together, I took this knife and I put it right into the middle of my palm, and you helped me get through that night. It was pretty rough, but let's help people avoid doing that. What are the keys to opening up an oyster safely?
Okay. So number one is when you is going to be to use the towel to protect your hand. And there's different ways you can open oysters. And for me to show you the simplest way is to basically have a towel that's folded over nice and thick. You want to place the oyster in it. You want to fold the towel over. And watch what I'm going to do here. I'm going to give it another little fold, which is going to provide an extra little added bit of protection. And then you're going to hold the oyster.
And this is narrow edge out, right?
Narrow edge out. You'll see the opening.
Right.
So if you have the oyster, it looks like this.
Right.
And right in here is where you're going to go. And then your hand is basically protected now. And you don't want to do what a lot of people generally do is they jam the knife right in there and they slip, and that's when they end up stabbing themselves. You got to be very gentle with it, and you just want to wiggle nice and easy. And I push it a little too hard, but I'm protected. And when you get it here, you want to scrape the top of the shell. So it's very simple. The oyster's open. You remove it from the bottom shell. Every oyster, regardless of where you buy from, you have to smell it. So
how are you going to know if it's not going to be a good oyster?
When you open an oyster, you're going to know that it's not a good oyster. It will destroy the whole room you're in. You should never ever wash the brine out of the oyster. There's no purpose in that. If you have shell in there, you could take your finger, run it through, and get it out. Or you can easily just flip the oyster over, and it's done very simply. Never ever rinse the liquor out of the shell.
And now, where were these from?
These are Island Creek oysters from Duxbury, Massachusetts.
And why do you like these?
I like these because they tend to be a little brinier. I really like the salinity content of it. That's what I really like about East Coast oysters.
You've got a mignonette, you've got a horseradish, and you've got cocktail sauce. Let's go through these. How do you make these at home, and why make them as opposed to buying them, with cocktail sauces?
Well, first thing I wanted to say, generally speaking, you always want to taste an oyster in its purest form, which is just the oyster. But once you get past that, the sauces really enhance the flavors. A mignonette can be made very simply. We do ours by chopping up pickle at the restaurant with ground black pepper coarsely, chopped shallot, white wine, and red wine vinegar. You don't need the pickles.
Equal
shallot,
parts vinegars here?
It's equal part white wine and vinegar. The horseradish, just basic grated horseradish peeled mixed with a little bit of white wine vinegar.
Okay.
That's it, very simple. So cocktail sauce, you just want to take some ketchup, a little bit of the grated horseradish, some chopped garlic, Worcestershire and Tabasco, maybe a little pinch of pepper.
Stir it up,
that
and that's it. There's an East Coast, West Coast kind of oyster thing that goes on. Obviously, we're here on the East Coast right now, but can you talk a little bit about the differences in those oysters for people that are interested in trying a variety?
Absolutely. So they're very different. They're flavored by the area of water that they're in and the salinity content of the water or the sweetness. So if they're closer to the ocean, they're going to be saltier. If they're in more towards the mouth of the river, they'll be a little sweeter on the East Coast. When you go across to the West Coast, the water's not as salty, so as the Atlantic is when you're in the Pacific. So you're going to have a more creamier oyster that they have there.
Ed, thank you so much for coming in today and talking oysters with us. You found out how to make your own mignonette, your horseradish, the difference between East and West Coast oysters. Ed McFarland.
Thank you, Arthur.